Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name and Hearthstone is the game, and these are the 10 best legendary cards to craft in the Boomsday Project meta. Now, specifically, these are cards that are going to fundamentally improve the overall quality of your collection. You can go out there, of course, and craft single specific legendary cards that fit in the exact deck you want to play. That's one way to have a crafting strategy. But this video is more about people who are just trying to build a broad base of good cards that are not only going to serve them in this current meta, but also be useful in future metas as well. That said, the rankings in this video do take into account things like how long this card will be available in standard format. So you'll see some cards essentially penalized because they're going to be rotating out sooner than other cards that might be around forever, a la those in the classic set. Also, I'm going to focus more on neutral legendaries than class legendaries. There will still be some class cards showing up in this list, but again, they'll receive essentially a little bit of a penalty, even if they're being played a ton right now, because they're only available for one class. Those aren't going to be as useful across your entire collection for the rest of your Hearthstone career. That said, let's go ahead and jump into these top 10 legendary cards to craft. Up first here at the number 10 spot, we have Malygos, classic set legendary, and I think most notably used and really only used in combo decks in Hearthstone, where you try to pull off some kind of crazy shenanigan utilizing Malygos's +5 spell damage, instantly killing your opponent with an OTK or 2-turn kill of some kind. Right now, this is notably used in Druid decks, where they discount this card or some other card in their deck with Dream Petal Florist and then do a ton of damage with Moonfires, or maybe set up a Libidinous Floop into some swipes and Moonfires. All kinds of different ways to empower Malygos right now in Druid. We also see it in things like Rogue a little bit, and there's been a lot of different classes throughout Hearthstone's history find ways to make this thing work. And although it is a classic card, it's been around forever and will probably still be the go-to combo card in the future, because it's a combo card and it really only seems to work in one specific sort of archetype, and even then usually only has one or maybe even no decks that are prominent at any given time. It's still not necessarily the best card to have in your collection just because it has more of a fringe use case. Nonetheless, still a solid craft and a good one to have around, barely making the cut here in the top 10. And then up next here at the number 9 spot, we have Alexstrasza, another dragon aspect, and in a lot of ways a card that's similar to Malygos, often played in combo style decks where you're trying to put your opponent down to 15 health to set up some sort of lethal kill very soon thereafter. Alexstrasza does have a little bit more general use than Malygos, though, and that is why she ranks higher on this list. Sometimes she just fits into control decks where she can serve as a heal in a pinch, and as an 8/8 body, that creates a lot of pressure as well. So Alexstrasza has seen more play historically than Malygos, and I think that's a trend that will continue. Right now, Alexstrasza mostly being played in the same sort of Malygos combo Druid deck, also showing up in things like combo Priest, and even some big spell mages find room for Alexstrasza as well. So a card that's already being played a lot, and certainly one that's going to be a great asset for your collection moving forward. Up next at the number 8 spot is Deathstalker Rex, the Death Knight hero card for Hunter, and maybe my favorite card in all of Hearthstone. This guy, of course, being played in virtually every Hunter deck right now just because of the absurd late game value that he provides. Deathstalker Rex can single-handedly win games, and because there are a couple different viable ways to play Hunter, this might actually be the very best time to ever craft Deathstalker Rex, despite being a class card and despite rotating out of standard format in the next 7-8 months or so. You're still going to get a lot of playability out of this thing in that short time because it's just so strong. Hunter is so great right now, and this card is really just tons of fun too. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that offers a little bit of bonus and upside as well. All of that makes Deathstalker Rex just a great piece for your collection. You can basically win games with this single card, and that's a powerful thing to craft too. When you know you have one card that can be deck defining and game winning, that stretches your dust a little farther than other cards might be able to. So if you would all expect to play Hunter, this guy is an absolute must-have great card to craft. And then moving on to the number 7 spot here, we have another Death Knight hero card. This time around, it's Blood Reaver Gul'dan for Warlock, and much like Rexar, this guy can be played in almost any version of Warlock. Now, right now, at this exact moment, Zoo Warlock is not traditionally running Blood Reaver Gul'dan because he's a little slow, but Gul'dan has certainly been included in Zoo Warlock deck lists even in the past, and I think he might be again in the future, just depending on how the meta shapes up, because again, Gul'dan is one of those cards that can just instantly win you a game the turn he's played. not only because of that really big board swing when he resummons tons of demons, but the long-term value of his hero power just stacks up to absurdity because it's a lot of damage, it can be board clear, and of course it's a ton of healing on top of all that as well, making this probably the strongest Death Knight hero card of them all, historically speaking, and I think one that will continue to reign supreme until it rotates out of standard format. If you're looking to play a Warlock, Blood Reaver Gul'dan will absolutely be a centerpiece for your collection as long as it stays in standard format, and it's something you must craft. Moving on, we have Prince Kellis from the Knights of the Frozen Throne. And even though this card is going to be rotating out of standard format in the next 7 or 8 months or so, it's still absolutely worth it to have in your collection until then, because Prince Kellis is one of the most defining cards in the meta right now, driving things most prominently like Zoo Warlock, which is one of the most common, popular, and powerful decks in the game. But Prince Kellis is not limited to that, but basically any other sort of aggro or tempo deck finds ways to put this thing in, because right now 2-drops in Hearthstone, not the strongest, making Prince Kellis' buff a huge upside. We also see this in things like Shudderwalk Shaman even, where you just cast lots and lots of Prince Kellis buffs on all of your minions, stacking up each time Shudderwalk copies those battle cries. So even slower decks can utilize this thing as well. Even big spell mages find ways to work with Prince Kellis. So it looks like an aggro card. It's very dominant in aggro decks, but also good across the board. And that's why if you craft Prince Kellis, you're absolutely going to find a way to play this thing, and you're probably going to play it ton between now and when it rotates out of standard format, and that's why even though it doesn't have the longest lifespan, still absolutely a card that's worth crafting. So now let's continue our chain of Knights of the Frozen Throne cards here at the number 5 spot with the Lich King, which is one of the most played cards in all of Hearthstone and often ranks as the most played legendary in Hearthstone because it's one of those cards that you can just toss into almost any deck list and it makes sense. Even aggressive decks can top out their curve with Lich King. Not all do, of course. Certainly odd decks can't run Lich King either. There are restrictions, but ever since this guy's been released, he fits into aggressive decks, mid-range decks, and control decks, of course, love to run Lich King as a big late-game bomb taunt, and all kinds of different ways to utilize this card exist, whether that's resummoning it with Hadronox or just tossing it as a big threat into an even deck. This guy sees play. It's one of those cards you just never hate to have in your hand, and of course, the upside and the swing potential from the Death Knight hero cards is enormous, so the Lich King can absolutely win games on its own, and of course, having a star go-to card to help you define any sort of deck really goes a long way in Hearthstone. And once again, even though he's going to be rotating out before too long, still worth it to have the Lich King in the meantime, because this is just going to have a ton of utility, be an absolutely fantastic card in a lot of different decks, and once again, will feel like a real centerpiece for your collection moving forward for the next few months. So as we move into the top 4 here, we're going to be finally looking at some cards that won't be rotating out for a while. So essentially moving into more classic cards or the Boomsday Project or Witchwood legendary cards that are defining the meta. And up first here we have Ginn Greymane, the even side of the even and odd decks in the Witchwood. And with Ginn Greymane, of course, he really sets up 2 prominent meta decks right now, which are even Warlock, an incredibly powerful way to play Warlock, and then also you have even Shaman, which is less popular, but still one of the better decks in the game. And then on top of that, there are a handful of different variations. You see some even Paladin still around these days, a few other decks here and there. But the thing about Ginn Greymane is not only is he really strong right now in defining a couple very, very powerful decks, but because of the way Hearthstone works and more cards are always getting added into the sets or into any given standard format rotation, Ginn Greymane looks like the sort of card that's just going to get better and better as you get more and more cards. So particularly over the course of the next expansion, Ginn Greymane decks or even decks might be even better because there are more even cards to pull from. There's just going to be a higher tier set of available options for any given even deck, and that means Ginn Greymane has a long lifespan, and he might see a bit of a dip at the standard format rotation, but then will continue to improve again and again. As long as hero power discounts are strong, and they will be, then Ginn Greymane's going to stay good. So fantastic right now, meta defining at the moment, and a card that's going to last for another year and a half or more when it comes to competitive viability. That's a good card to have in your collection. Moving on to the number 3 spot here, we have our only Boomsday Project card. It's Ziliax. And Ziliax, although it looks like a mech synergy card specifically, is one that has showed up in a variety of different decks, sometimes almost as the only mech in the deck, just because as a standalone card, when you have this many keywords and do this much cool stuff, Ziliax is really good. And then as soon as you bundle him into any other mechs, when you can give that mech rush or set it up to be a big pile of stats, Ziliax effects get even better. The Divine Shield gets way better with more stats. The Lifesteal gets way better with more stats. The Taunt gets way better with more stats. So it's a good utility card to have. Now I think you see Ziliax most often in probably Odd Warrior right now, a very prominent meta deck. But this guy's played in 12% of decks in Hearthstone right now, which is really, really high when it comes to Hearthstone card rankings. I think that probably makes it the 4th or 5th most popular legendary in the game, and in the top 15 or so cards overall in Hearthstone. So don't sleep on this one. Sort of surprisingly fantastic. We all knew it'd be good, but I'm still stunned how many different kinds of decks and environments are willing to include this thing. So Ziliax moving forward, even though we might lose mechs as a synergy in future expansions, I don't think that really hurts Ziliax's craftability. I think he will still stay a strong, solid card on his own because of that pile of keywords. So don't count him out. If you're worried about mechs, that's not a reason for this thing to fall on this list. I think it's still a great card to have moving forward. Now moving on to the top 2. At the number 2 spot here, we have Baku the Moon Eater. Ginn Greymane's cousin on the odd side of things from the Witchwood. Baku also going to be around for a while as a part of the Witchwood. Still has something like a year and a half or more left in its lifespan in standard format. So you're going to have this one for a while. And of course, we know odd decks are fantastic in Hearthstone. Notably, Odd Paladin and Odd Rogue stand out the most. We've seen some other odd decks on the fringes of play here and there. But just between those two, you have two fantastically fast, great ladder style decks. They're both so good at climbing efficiently and quickly. They've both stayed good now through 2 expansions with complementary cards. And as long as Baku's hero power is upgrading that Paladin hero power to summon a couple dudes, I don't see that deck ever going away. It seems like it's just going to be a dominant aggro deck for a very, very long time. So Baku seems like a safe craft, but also just an absurdly powerful craft as well. Because, you know, like I said with Ginn Greymane, these sorts of cards just get better the more cards that exist out there. So Baku is going to pay off dividends for a very, very long time. And that's why it ranks higher than even classic set legendaries, because you got a long time to play this one, and it's going to be so very good the entire time. And then finally on to the number 1 spot here, we have Leroy Jenkins. And this is a spot he's taken many times in the past at the top of the best legendary cards to craft in Hearthstone. For a couple reasons. Leroy is a classic card, so he's going to be around forever, or at the very least, he'll give you a dust refund if he ever moves to the Hall of Fame. And as long as Leroy's been around, he's been seeing play in all kinds of top-tier high-end meta decks as a finisher piece. It turns out aggro decks love to have 6 damage for 5 mana. He's also a neutral card, of course, so lots of different classes can utilize Leroy Jenkins. Today, he's being played in a handful of different aggro decks as finishers, probably most notably Odd Rogue, but he even makes his way into Zoo Warlock as well. He serves as a great tool in both those decks. He's even been played in the past in like control and combo decks as well, where you set up some kind of crazy Leroy charge damage to win as a combo deck or control deck. So he's not really just limited to a certain archetype either. Between his universality, his ability to last forever, and just the fact that he's one of the best, most consistent cards throughout Hearthstone's history, that sets a great precedent moving forward that he will probably be one of the best forever. And that's why Leroy Jenkins, to me, pretty much without any sort of debate, is the best legendary card to have in your collection. He's going to do a lot of work for you, see a ton of play, and you can't go wrong crafting this one. And there you have it, folks. Those are my 10 best legendary cards to craft in the Boomsday Project era. Now, of course, all kinds of things can change. The meta can shift overnight. Also, I might be a little bit biased here and there. That's why I would always recommend take careful consideration anytime you're spending arcane dust. I think you should also seek out second opinions. I'm certainly not the only person out there recommending cards for you to craft. If you do those things, you'll put yourself in a pretty good spot to build the best sort of collection. I think all of these cards are safe, Just everybody knows these are good cards to have. You do have to weigh things like how long you want your collection to be viable. Maybe Knights of the Frozen Throne cards just aren't worth it for you right now because you're really looking 2 or 3 years down the line and you want to focus more on classic cards. That's okay. You set that priority. I still think you're going to get a lot of work out of these cards rotating out of standard format over the next 6, 7, 8 months. They are going to be good and dominant pieces, and Hearthstone life might be difficult without them in the meantime. So that's my personal preference, but of course, use your judgment, use your decision. You guys should always be thinking about what's best for you and your personal preferences for Hearthstone. All that said, if you have any thoughts, extra comments, recommendations, considerations, leave those in the comments below. But until then, thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, game on.